Today's video was sponsored by Master Patron Oberon Naga. To get guaranteed requests for videos and other great rewards, go to patreon.com/LilyTheDoof and sign up today. You ever wonder why the lupine hate us so much? I'm willing to bet that you haven't. Vampires versus werewolves has been a pop culture staple for who knows how long. That's just the way the world works, right? No, every bigot has their reasons. They're never good reasons, but they're reasons nonetheless. And if you want to convert someone, or at the very least, be able to counter their arguments, you need to understand where they come from. So let me tell you a story. Gathered from ancient texts, a little historical inferring, and even the testimony of a werewolf theurge, this is the tale of the Triat. The Triat are essentially the gods of the maltheistic religion of Werewolf the Apocalypse. It is them from which all spirits of the Umbra are born. They are the architects of the universe, and possibly its destroyers as well. As with most things in werewolf's lore, the story of the Triat starts at the beginning. In the beginning, there was only Gaia, the earth herself. When Gaia grew lonely, she created three beings, three gods, to aid in her construction and expansion. These beings, our Triat, each served a different purpose. The Weaver was a creator and an architect, a being of order and structure. The Wild granted life to the Weaver's creations, giving them meaning and purpose. And lastly, the Worm was a destroyer, wiping out the old and useless in order to make way for the new. These gods worked in tandem to expand and empower Gaia. This period of peace was known as the Golden Age, when there was no distinction between the worlds of spirit and flesh. It's said that deep down in some unconscious part of their souls, all Garu remember what the Golden Age was like, and long to return to it. But after every Golden Age comes a Dark Age. As the millennia wore on, the Weaver began to grieve for its creations, taken from it and warped beyond recognition by the Wild, only to be destroyed by the Worm. This grief bubbled deep within the Weaver's web and eventually erupted into madness. The Weaver cried out, a cry of anger so powerful that the world was split into two, the Umbra and the Fleshlands. Still not content, the Weaver pursued those it blamed for its grief. The Wild, true to its name, proved too elusive for the Weaver, as it fled into the Umbra. But the Worm proved much easier prey. The Weaver abducted the Worm, trapping it within its web, so that it may continue to work unimpeded for all of eternity, while torturing its greatest enemy. From there, I'm certain you can guess the rest. The Worm's psyche was shattered from its torture, the Wild was driven into hiding, and the Weaver continues to expand its influence to this day, unaware, or simply not caring, of the Worm clinging to it and its creations like parasites. Now, in your werewolf game, unless you're using the Time of Judgment Apocalypse campaign, or are just looking for a quick way to lose all your friends, odds are your players aren't going to encounter the Triat directly. Who they will encounter are their aides, the puppets dancing on the end of their strings. which is what the rest of this video will be about. Let's start off with the spirits of the wild, since they are very loosely defined. By which I mean, in all of my research, I could only find one category of wild spirit: magically empowered and very angry plants known as the Undergrowth. Every other example of wild spirit defies being put into a box. You have the wild worms, massive earthworms who crawl along abandoned detritus to repurpose and recycle the energy of creation. There's lightning bugs who live on sacred ground and eat the flesh of any intruders in hopes of deterring further interference from humanity. You have the Unsigila, an actual dinosaur who survived the extinction event and now lives under Alaska, being placated by the Wendigo tribe. And my personal favorite wild spirit, the cow. The cow is an immortal cow with a deeply unsettling gaze. Anyone who has attempted to hunt it has met with great misfortune, or even death. What is the cow? Why does it exist? Who are we to demand such explanations of the cow? Weaver spirits, on the other hand, are incredibly well catalogued, chief among them the spider spirits. They act as guards and architects for the weaver's web, soldiers and conquerors, and embodiments of order and technology. Strangely enough, not every spider spirit looks like a spider, according to the sourcebooks. La Mulacrante, embodying the economy and trade, to quote directly from the book, is something of a spiritual duck-billed platypus, while the shock troopers of the Chaos Monitors resemble glass scorpions. Other weaver spirits tend to be more specialized than the spiders, like the geomids, living fractals and geometric anomalies that work to defend and sustain weaver territory within the Umbra, or the elementals, golem-esque creatures built from things like plastic, glass, electricity, and even atomic radiation. Lastly, and most importantly for the average werewolf game, there are the decaying and corrupt servitors of the worm. They do not make, they do not change, they destroy, pure and simple. I touched briefly on the worm servants in my werewolf beginner's guide, but I'll expand on them briefly here. First and foremost in the worm's army are the Banes, vengeful spirits of taint. They possess the ability to warp the mortal world and influence humanity. Banes are mostly known for possessing living beings and turning them into Fomori, creatures of great power and fractured psyche. While most Fomor are out on the field, battling Garu and waging their war against Gaia, the true masterminds are in the boardroom. Keeping with the theme of the worm piggybacking off of the Weaver's creations, corporations are a vital part of the worm's tool belt, and a lot of them, like the multinational company Pentex, are run by Fomor agents. Granted the cunning of the Weaver and the madness of the worm, the Fomor are an unassuming but very powerful threat. And that's the whole story. Well, as whole as an eon-spanning tale about spider gods can be. Now, how do we fit into this? Are we corpses possessed by Bane spirits? Do we have a deal with the devil flowing through our blood? Regardless of what the answers are, I've provided you with a very important weapon, Lick: knowledge. Knowing what bigots believe, and why they believe them, is the first step in being able to combat them. The second step is, of course, having a brick handy when reason doesn't cut it. It's like my sire used to say, if you can't join them, beat them, stake them, and leave them for the sun.